Hi, everybody. This is Jennifer from Gals, Ghosts, and Ladies on my typical Saturday night live stream. Thank you so much for joining us. Tonight, we're talking about the Villisca Axe Murder House, and tonight is going to be part 2. So I'll talk about that in a second, but as usual, I have to give my welcomes to everybody. If there is anybody watching, please give me a comment. Let me know that you can hear me all right and see me all right. I do want to take a moment and remind folks that this is an 18 and over conversation. We are definitely, I usually say, we usually talk about disturbing, blah, blah. We are definitely talking about some disturbing stuff tonight. And I like to joke that I'm surprised that we're not more disturbed about the disturbing content that we discuss. Because this one's pretty disturbing. As true crime goes, but like I said, we'll get into that shortly. So yeah, this is an 18 and over space. Also wanted to remind you that this is a 420 friendly space. Listen, pour a glass of wine, cup of coffee, crack a cold beer, and smoke them if you got them, because I know I did. So however you want to relax, go right ahead and relax. Kick back. You don't even have to watch. You can just listen. This is one of those things that you can even later put on in the background and just listen to. So speaking of putting on in the background, I wanted to welcome everybody who's watching on Facebook. I want to welcome everyone who's watching on YouTube. And I want to give a big thanks to anybody who watches at a later time. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. As many of you know, I had booked a table for myself at a paranormal fair in Rockland in November, and I was getting ready to sell some really cool stuff, kind of a combination of like Christmas and Halloween, because this fair was November 23rd, so it's kind of a no-brainer. It was after Halloween, before Christmas. It's a paranormal thing. So I had put together some really, I think, cool stuff to sell at some really good prices. But the fair has since been canceled. So now I have some stuff available for sale, and I want you to take a look at it. Rock bottom prices. I do need to cover my costs. Any profits do go to covering Gals, Ghosts, and Ladies, because it costs me money every month to do StreamYard and that kind of thing. So, anyways, I was going to have a table. So I'm not just like selling stuff. I was going to have a table at a craft fair, and I want to show you what we've got for sale. Take a peek. So this is the Gals, Ghosts, and Ladies gift bag. So you get that cute ghost bag. You see that little pink ghost with the black ghost charm. There's assorted color charms. You get one of them. You get a pink disco ball charm, stickers, some really, really cool Christmas cards, bracelet, necklace, change purse, 2 mini black bows that are really quality and really, really cool. And that, see that skeleton ornament? Oh my God. Let's see. I just happen to have one right here. These are so cool. So, and they're really, really quality. And I was going to sell them at the fair, and the fair got canceled. So, like I said, I put together these bags, and you get all that stuff in a bag. Let's see. So it says $45 value. It's really probably more like 55 or 60, but it is only $25, and it includes shipping. Perfect holiday gift for the guys or gals in your life. DM me for details. Get the bag, 4 cards, stickers, bracelet, necklace, the skeleton ornament, the bows, the bag, just really cool. And then also you get a raffle ticket, and the raffle ticket is good for, let's see. All right, there you go. And shipping is included. See that raffle ticket? We'll get there. I made a little video for you. So yeah, $25, and it includes shipping and handling. And it also includes a raffle ticket, and the raffle ticket is going to be for this baby head REM pod. How creepy is that? And the raffle ticket alone would go for $5. So you get all of that. for $25, and I'll ship it right to your house. Shipping is free in the continental United States. I do have to make that disclaimer. Initially I was going to do the drawing for the baby head REM pod on the 23rd. The date of There we go, the date of the paranormal fair, but that got canceled. So I think I'm going to go a little later on that. I haven't really made up my mind. But let's see. This is one of those cards. They're very quality and they're a good size and they're blank inside. And in that bag, you get a pack of 4 of these, and they come, of course, with envelopes, and they're ready to mail. Let's see. I showed you. What else can I show you? Show you some of the cool jewelry that also comes in a little pouch, which I have a bracelet which I wear all the time. There's various color bracelets. They're really, really cool, and they're good quality. And also a glass heart necklace. You get both. So if you're interested, make a great gift for yourself or for the gal in your life. And you also get that raffle ticket, and there's also stickers in there. And there's and this is just cute too. You get a little ghost hand lotion. Think stocking stuffers. Think decorating your Christmas tree. So check this stuff out. And I do hope that you will support us and buy them. Like I said, make a great gift. But anyways, blah, 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 blah. It's really important for you all to know that that fair did get canceled, because I know some people were planning on coming to visit the gal's table. I hear my dog barking and I apologize. That's all right. Nobody's going to come in and steal me tonight. And that's a good thing, because the story we're going to tell is pretty freaking creepy. Um, So, so anyways, I do hope that you have an interest in the bags. And also I have some tarot cards available. I actually have this one for myself, Pink Gothic Tarot, which I absolutely love. So I have some of these available. I've got Alice in Wonderland, Hocus Pocus Tarot cards, Pink Gothic Terror Tarot, and the Tarot Original 1909. And one of those decks is promised to Kristen. So I'll be bringing one of them to Kristen, or was it the Terror one? I'll go back and check my messages, but whichever one you wanted, Kristen, you got it. You got it. So again, thank you everybody for watching, and I'm going to get right into it because there's a lot of territory to cover. Last week we had Courtney Buckley on, and thank you so much, Courtney Buckley. What a fun and excellent guest. Very knowledgeable about Villisca, very friendly. I was going to say answered all my questions, but it's like every question I had written down, Courtney just volunteered that during our conversation. So it was a really good flow of information from Courtney. And again, she's so fun and so friendly, very gracious, and we're so grateful that she chose to spend last Saturday night with us. So last Saturday, we really talked about the haunting aspect of the Villisca Axe Murder House. We know there was a crime that happened there, and big crime. We're going to talk about it. And as I've said before, I tend to think that when those kind of big crimes happen, they do leave behind an imprint of energy, even if there's no such thing as ghosts. I don't know if there is or there isn't. Courtney certainly had some strange experiences there that we're going to talk about. But it certainly opens your mind. So I also want to say that Courtney is, I'm looking off to the side to my teleprompter, and you know me with my trusty notes and purple pen, and also got my nails done, got my hair done. So I don't see anybody viewing yet, but that's all right. Somebody's going to come across my path. I'm feeling pretty spiffy tonight, and whoever does join us or watch us later, again, thank you so much. I have a lot of information to deliver, and I think I uncovered some kind of like facta obscura. But anyways, back to what I was saying about Courtney Buckley. She is ghost bait on a show called Scared and Alone. I posted a link in comments. I'm going to pull up my comments and see it. Yep, there it is. Oh, please watch her. Watch all her shows. She is excellent. If you're into this kind of thing, I know this is kind of a specialty thing, but if you are watching this show, then you're probably into that kind of stuff. So yeah, check that out, Courtney Buckley. And she's just a fun person, and I can't wait to talk to her again. So let's get back to my little teleprompter that's off to the side. So, geez, so what the heck happened in Villisca, Iowa? So, Villisca, Iowa. You know what I like to say? Let's paint a picture. Let's set the scene of Villisca, Iowa. So, the town was settled in 1858. It's on the rail line, so it became a very successful town because it was on the rail line which passed through there. It was thought to have been named by the natives as Pleasant View. That's what they thought Villisca meant, but it turns out later that it means, drum roll please, evil place. Kind of like a Hockomock swamp, it made me think of. But so Villisca, which I doesn't really roll off the tongue nicely, Villisca. Anyways, it does not mean what they initially thought it meant. But anyways, so it was settled in 1858 on the railroad line, very successful. In 1869, Joseph and Ann Moore built that house and raised their family there. And eventually, in the let's see, in a later time period, their son Josiah, I think Joe and Annie, when they built that house, had 6 kids, and it was a pretty small house. They must have been right on top of each other. But the house ended up going to Josiah and Sarah, and they had 4 kids in that house. And they had Herman, Mary, Boyd, and Paul. They had 3 boys and a girl, all in that house. And from what I understand, it's like a 2 bedroom or like 2.5 bedroom, very small house. So it's a lot of people in that house. Anyways, oh, there I go, spilling juice all over my nice new robe. I'm like George Costanza tonight. I'm ensconced in velvet. And I have new socks on too, so I'm very comfortable. Very happy. Purple pen, velvet, new socks, and a scary story. Anyways, um, so Joe was a very successful businessman, and that's going to come out more later in the story. Joe was a very successful businessman. No, Josiah was a very successful businessman, and him and his wife Sarah had those 4 children, like I said. Um, and in Villisca, Iowa, in the, let's see, early 1900s, there was a lot of agriculture. There was corn, and it's still corn. It's corn country, the corn belt, I guess, as they call it. And there were oats being sown there, but corn and oats and wheat, that kind of thing, grown out there. And then there was also livestock. So not just agriculture, but livestock, um, beef and dairy cattle, poultry. So there were chicken and turkeys. And pigs. So that was very prominent in that area. So the business that Josiah Moore had was kind of like a general store or a farm implement store. Um, and it was very, very successful. But again, keep that in mind. We're going to talk about that more in a couple of minutes. And if anybody's watching, drop a comment, say hello, let me know you're there. I've seen a couple people kind of come and go, but I do hope somebody comes and stays a while, because this is a really crazy story. So, anyways, where were we? Let's see, very successful. So, all right. Now, on June 9th, 1912, that was almost summer. It was late spring in Villisca, Iowa, and it was a Sunday, and school was already out. I looked that up. I thought June 9th would have been a little early for school to be out, but not in an agricultural community. And also, it's very warm in June in Villisca, Iowa. So at that time, it would have been in the 80s, and that's kind of warm to be in grammar school. If I think back in the 80s, we didn't have air conditioning now when I was a kid, and they certainly didn't have it in the 1900s. So, anyways, it wasn't a school night, and it was a Sunday, and it was a beautiful, balmy, breezy, sunny day. And at the Presbyterian church, which the Moore family belonged to, there was a family activity that night, an activity that was geared towards the children. So the Moore family took their 4 children and met other families there. That's all kind of very normal for the time period, for church to be the social center for the families and for the family to the entire family to go out and do something, not just the parents or not just the father, the whole family. So the whole family attended this kind of this children's event at the church, which actually, from what I understand, didn't even start till 8 o'clock. So it was kind of late at night. And that night in particular, like I said, it was a warm and breezy and balmy summer night. The sun didn't set until 8:50, so it stayed late, as we like in on those hot summer nights. So when the event ended, the Moore family and their 4 children decided to take 2 other little girls that weren't theirs but were friends of the family home with them for the night. Now, this was not unusual for the Moore family and the Stillinger family to have back and forth overnights with their kids. Their kids were in the same age range. And I mean, I gotta get comfortable. Sorry. Okay, there. And they were friends, and it was not out of the ordinary for their kids to spend the night, play together, and that kind of stuff. So the two girls, Lena and Lena Stillinger, I think they were, I want to say 8 and 12. And forgive me if I'm wrong. I forgot to say in the beginning, all my research is my research. So I'm responsible for all errors. But that being said, I'm not going to cite all my sources. If you hear something and you think it's interesting, look it up yourself. I also want to say Kenny Maines. I got a lot of information from his program on YouTube called Ah, Unsolved No More. So Kenny Maines, I definitely say check him out. Cool stuff. He's an amazing cold case detective. Yeah, Unsolved No More. So I got a lot of information about this from him. Um, so let's see, what were we saying? So they brought these 2 children home, which was not out of the ordinary. They only lived 5 minutes from the Presbyterian church, and many people saw them all walking together that day. So there were 8 of them. They were a conglomerate, and that's quite a party of people. It's a lot of people in one little group. So they went home and went to bed. And when they went to bed, it was the 2 parents in the parents' bedroom. The 4 more children were in one bedroom, and then the 2 Stillinger girls, from what I understand, were by themselves in a room downstairs. Um, and over the course of the overnight hours from June 9th, 1912, to the morning of June 10th, 1912, everybody in the house was murdered. Um, 8 people. It's America's only octuple murder, and it's unsolved. It remains unsolved to this day. I hope some folks tune in because I have uncovered some facta obscura that I really want to share with you about this. Um, so it was a pretty gruesome scene. And what happened the next day was that Josiah Moore didn't show up for work, and he owned a store. And also, they had a farm, and the neighbors noticed that the farm chores weren't taken care of. So the neighbor, at some point between 4:30 and 5:30 in the morning, neighbor shows up at the house, and there's the shades are drawn, and the windows and the doors are covered over, and they knock and they knock and they don't get any response. So they get a hold of Josiah Moore, one of his brothers, and he's got a key, and he comes over. There goes my slipper. He's got a key, and he comes over, and he unlocks the door and walks in and discovers this really horrific scene, this octuple travesty in this small house. Um, And that is what happened there. So last week, Courtney talked to us about like the haunting and information that she knew about, and things that she could correlate, and things that she felt, and the attic, crazy stuff. Um, and this week we're talking about the crime, but I found, as I'm going on with gals and we're talking about the mysterious and macabre, there really seems to be, excuse me, there really seems to be in some type of bigger picture and some type of synchronicity or divine, I don't know, I don't want to say divine plan, but some shit uh, where stuff happens, weird stuff happens, and I don't know, can't be explained. Um, there were this is just this stumps me. This completely stumps me. I'm at a loss for words, and anybody who knows me knows that doesn't happen very often. I'm not usually at a loss for words. This had me at a loss for words. Has me at a loss for words now. Uh, it reminded me a little bit of the Amityville horror story, because all this craziness happened and nobody heard anything. So not only did neighbors hear anything, now neighbors, I'm sure they were kind of far away, but they were close enough that they could tell that the family was late getting up. So they weren't that far away. But the neighbors didn't hear anything. And all everybody was found in the bed, and they hadn't woken up. So that's really strange, because one of the things that really struck me, that Courtney said, she said it during her interview with us last week, and she said it also on Scared and Alone while she was at the Villisca Axe Murder House. The walls there are paper thin in that house. She said you can hear people breathing on the first floor. You can hear somebody rustling bed sheets. You can hear a cough. You can hear somebody walking. There's the walls are paper thin, and you can hear everything there. So somebody was in the house lying in wait. That's the theory, in the attic, and would have had to have been so perfectly still and not coughed and not cleared their throat and not shuffled and not leaned back and not accidentally kicked something in an attic that you would think they'd be unfamiliar with. So that's weird too, that there was somebody lying in wait in the house silently, so silently in this house with these reported paper thin walls where you can hear everything. That is creepy in and of itself. Again, it's like you pick these things and it's just all creepy shit. No wonder the place experiences weird stuff. Um, let's see. I'm going for the pink notes, you guys. So now it's getting serious. Pink notes, purple pen, vape pen. Nobody's watching. Well, cheers, guys. It is Saturday night and I am not driving. So cheers. So yeah, we're diving in for the pink notes. And I've got some bullet points here. You can see, I've got to learn how to get the camera backwards so you can read my stuff. But there's my bullet points, excuse me. Pardon me. So some things that were noticed in the house that were strange. The shades were all drawn. That in and of itself is not unusual. But remember when I said the doors, the glass on the doors were covered? Well, the glass on the doors were covered from the inside with clothing of the victims. So that's really weird. You could imagine the family drawing the shades at 10 o'clock at night after getting in with children, and putting everybody to bed after being tired from a church picnic, and getting everybody in their pajamas, and going to the bathroom, all kind of shit. And the house didn't have indoor plumbing, so it must have been a project to get 6 children to the bathroom and ready for bed. So, but that's weird. I mean, anyways, I was saying that you would think that pulling the shades down is kind of part of a bedtime routine, but covering the window glass with clothing, that's weird. They found a plate of uneaten beans and bread and butter on the kitchen table. Now, is that weird? And does that mean the killer tried to eat something? Yes, it's weird. No, it doesn't mean the killer tried to eat something. Maybe one of the kids had something to eat before bed and didn't eat or something. So without really knowing, that's a little, it's still weird. It's just still weird. Let's see. In the house, all the mirrors were found covered. I think there might be one mirror in the attic that's not covered, but all the mirrors in the house are covered, and one of the mirrors is just has a little piece of it showing. And Courtney, again, if you watch Scared and Alone, the episode, the link is in comments. Watch that episode, you'll see what happens, and it's kind of creepy. So, but the perpetrator covered all the mirrors in the house. In the house, they found a bowl of bloody water, so there was an indication that somebody tried to clean up afterwards. This was gruesome. So there would have been not only a very messy scene, physical scene, there would have been the person who had committed this would have been just covered in matter and debris and that kind of stuff. Trying not to be graphic, don't want it to get flagged on Facebook or YouTube. So, and you would imagine somebody would be trying to clean up in case they were trying to make a getaway and were seen. It would be very suspicious. It's going to be suspicious if they're seen leaving, but which nobody was. But it would have been even more suspicious if they were seen leaving covered in bloody clothing at 4 in the morning. If that's not suspicious, I don't know what is. So they did try to clean up, and that bowl of bloody water was found. They the These were axe murders, but not in what you would normally think. So they weren't done with the business end of the axe. These were committed with the opposite end of the axe, the blunt end of the axe, which is strange. I've chopped wood before. My mother lives in Harwinton, and she's lived in Harwinton for over 40 years, and I can tell you, I chopped a lot of wood in Harwinton, so I do know how an axe feels. Um, to hold it upside down would be really awkward, and I would hurt myself. I would hurt myself on the axe. There's no doubt about it. Just even thinking about it is uncomfortable and awkward to think about handling it. So that would be strange. But also, they also found that the axe upside down with the sharp end here and the blunt end up was swung so hard that it left marks in the ceiling. And I think that that's just an indication of the extremes of this situation. Again, just trying not to be gruesome, trying to talk about it, kind of intellectually without being gory and gruesome. Um, they did find a slab of bacon. It was wrapped, and it was also tied with paper. So there are many theories as to why it's there, and I certainly know what one of them was. But the fact that it was tied in paper and then tied with a rope almost meant that whoever this was had bought it or stole it or was going to take it with them, not for the nasty, nefarious purposes. Mm-mm. So, but they also found a lantern without a lamp on it in the Stillinger children's bedroom where they were sleeping. And try to remember that. We might come back to that point. Um, and again, and no one woke up. No one woke up in this small house. So this started, of course, with the parents, because you would have to, if you watch any Criminal Minds shows, or if you're a forensics file girl, I sure am. Certainly, I like falling asleep to forensic files. What does that say about me? But you would know that. Let's see, where was I? Um, I just lost my train of thought because I lost my spot on my notes. Sorry about that. But anyways, the Forensic Files girls finds all this stuff kind of fascinating, and that's just creepy in and of itself. That is disturbing. Anyways, let's see. No one woke up. Remember what Courtney said about that attic, that you could just hear anything. You could hear people breathing in the other room. So to have somebody lying in wait there, or then to do what they did through the house and not have other people wake up, is very bizarre. But But, and here's my facta obscura. My viewer, my one viewer who's watching, thank you so much for watching. Here's my facta obscura. I had never heard this about the Villisca Axe murder before, until I did a deep dive into this, and I'm going to drop what I believe to be a bombshell because I'd never heard this before. One person woke up. One person in that house was found to have defensive wounds. Of the 8 people in that house, one person woke up and had defensive wounds to what had happened. And I'm not going to get into the gory details, like I said. You can look that stuff up yourself. But it just so happened to be, I believe, it was one of the Stillinger girls, but I believe the 12-year-old. She woke up. She had defensive wounds. She had wounds under her defensive wounds, which means she was attacked, saw what was happening, and defended herself. Not only that, I am just absolutely goosebumps right now. Absolutely goosebumps. They found that this girl had been staged, and again, without getting into the details, there had absolutely been buggery, no other way to put it. So to me, that was brand new information about Villisca Axe Murder House. So that kind of makes it changes what the potentially what the motive could be. And there were so many, oh my God, there were 5 or 6 viable suspects. We're going to only talk about probably 2 or 3 of the really serious ones. But there was a contagion in the late 1800s, early 1900s, of axe murders everywhere across the United States. First of all, you had the new rail lines. Like we talked about, Villisca was built on the rail lines. So you had the rail lines where you had people, the hobos, the transients, criminals, and other people who didn't want to be known or caught or seen, could take the rails. So you could easily escape a crime like that. But the other thing, there was like a contagion of axe murders during that time period. Um, let's see who's watching. Oh, hi, Kelly. Hi, Kelly. Um, it was, yeah, it was one of the little Sillinger girls. Yeah. So, eh, eh, oh, geez. And there I go off on a tangent again. So Kelly, the poor girl. Now, like I said, the Sillinger girl woke up. Don't know where I was. Do not know where I was in that part of the story. Um, so, like I said, there was some buggery that was proven to have gone on. Anyways, that was the absolute bombshell that I knew nothing about. So I know what I was saying. I was talking about the axe murder contagion that was going on. Thank you for letting me get my thoughts back. The axe murder contagion that was going on during that time. Well, everybody had an axe in the late 1800s, the early 1900s. Look, in 1912 in Villisca, Iowa, there was no running water and there was no electricity, which means you didn't have a stove, which means you didn't have a furnace, which meant that you heated things with wood. And you boiled your water with wood and you cooked your food with wood. So you would have had an axe. This axe that was used here was from their coal shed. So they had an axe in the coal shed, but there probably was an axe in the house, probably an axe in the kitchen, probably an axe in the living room, maybe an axe in the parents' bedroom if there was a fireplace in there. So everybody had axes. But you're going to hear when I talk about these suspects, there were a lot of axe murders and a lot of murders going on during that time. People were crazy during the late 1800s and the early 1900s. Um, So, without further ado, I am going to jump right into talking about the suspects. And again, I do have my notes, and I apologize. It's on my purple paper with where's my purple pen and my purple pen and my pretty nails, and do what makes you happy. If you notice, I brought the color microphone back. The other microphone works so much better, but it's just plain black, and I like this one that changes color. Makes me happy. So, anyways, so I was going to talk about the suspects in this crime. And early on in the story, I talked about how Josiah Moore was a successful businessman in the community, and he had like a general store, like a farm implement, farm supply. Um, what's that? Agricultural, I don't know. Anyways, it's a chain that I'm trying to think of, but he had a successful store, general store, and farm implement store. But he used to work for a man, I think for the wealthiest man in the community, a man named Frank Jones, who had what? A general store and farm implement store, Tractor Supply. Kelly, you have probably heard this part of the story before. So, excuse me. So Josiah Moore, when he left working for Frank Jones and decided to start his own general store, and when he did, he took with him Tractor Supply Kelly, ding, 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 Kelly gets 10 points. He took with him the John Deere franchise. Now, this is Villisca, Iowa. Remember what I said early on. This is hay, oats, corn. So anything automated, John Deere, tractors, that kind of stuff is very wanted and new, and also new and exciting in that time. Innovative. This is the early 1900s. This would have changed farming literally overnight. So there was some animosity between Frank Jones and Josiah Moore of the family who was killed in that house. So Frank Jones was a business rival, and also it was rumored, never proven, rumored, let the record reflect, rumored that Josiah Moore was having an affair with Frank Jones's daughter-in-law. So Josiah Moore, being a resident of the Villisca Axe Murder House, not only started his own business and stole business from Frank Jones, he was also having an affair supposedly with Frank Jones's daughter-in-law. So Frank Jones had plenty of money and plenty motive, means, and opportunity. There's the forensic files things again. Frank Jones had motive, means, and opportunity to kill Josiah Moore, but the whole family, that is really extreme. And two visiting little girls, and then the buggery part that we know about. So that makes it a little extreme. So, but the theory went that Frank Jones hired a hitman named William Blackie Blackfeld or Blackfield. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. I mean, this is classic American Gothic. It's dark, it's brooding, it's mysterious. It's the heartland, it's the Bible Belt, it's the Corn Belt. It's family first. It's the early 1900s. Oh my goodness. Anyways, so William Blackie Blackfeld, the theory goes he was hired as a hitman by Frank Jones, who, like I said, had plenty of reason not to like Josiah Moore, but kill the kids and the wife and the visitors. I don't know about that. So Frank Jones definitely publicly denied the accusation, and however, there was a Detective Wilkerson of a private detective, the Burns Detective Agency, and he just really had it in for this guy, William Blackie Blackfield, as a suspect in the Villisca Axe murder crime. But Blackie was never arrested for this crime. So listen to this. So the Villisca Axe murder, Villisca murders took place in 1912. Blackie Blackfield was never arrested for the crime. He was always suspected of it. Well, in 1916, let me get into my Walter Cronkite mode. In 1916, by the same, Blackie Blackfield was arrested by the same detective for murdering his own wife, mother-in-law, father-in-law, an infant child in Blue Island, Illinois in 1914, 2 full years after the Villisca Axe murder. With very similar details, with the opposite of the business end of an axe. So here we've got another axe murder in 1914, and this was how many people? Oh my God. And with the opposite end of the axe, how weird is that? 2 full years after the Villisca Axe murders. Um, let's see. And there were other similar details. Bodies were covered in cloth. If I didn't mention that, back in Villisca, the bodies were also covered with cloth, not just the mirrors and the windows. Bodies were covered in cloth. There was a lamp with the chimney left off, a lantern with the lamp left off the chimney. I mentioned that before earlier. So that's another really weird coincidence. But he was never arrested for Villisca because payroll records put him in Paola, Kansas at the time of the Villisca axe murders. Now, that's just really weird that he was suspected of this really weird crime, and 2 years later he went on to commit something really similar in his own family. That's just bizarre. And then it's been proven that he didn't do it. He didn't do Villisca. So it's a lot of weird parallels on that. So, but Frank Jones really pushed for Blackie not to be prosecuted. Frank Jones really believed in his innocence, which made me think that Frank Jones didn't have anything to do with this, because even a business rival wouldn't want, to kill. Christ, the mafia doesn't kill your wife and your kids, and I don't think a business rival would either. Hope you like my cup. So anyways, well, as time went on, what happened, Blackie ended up suing that detective for the false accusations about the Villisca Axe murders, and won $2,500. And at that time, in the 1900s, I think this was 1916, that was the equivalent of $65,000. So Blackie, one of the suspects in Villisca Axe Murder House, sued a detective who wrongfully accused him and won, and then ended up going on to commit a heinous axe murder at a later time, just as bad, if not worse. But he didn't do it. But that was a suspect. So that was one suspect. So Frank Jones really pushed for somebody else to be looked at, the Reverend George Jacqueline Kennedy. So I think that Frank Jones really had a vested interest in finding who did this, because people were looking at him. Did you hire a hitman? Well, no, you didn't, but that meant suspicion was on him. So I feel like he really assisted because he wanted suspicion off himself, that's for sure. But he also had money to help, like, pay for detective agencies and stuff like that. So the next suspect we have is the Reverend George Jacqueline Kennedy, and he was arrested in 1917, 5 years later. I think, let's see, is he the one? He's the only person who was ever tried for this. There were one mistrial and one hung jury. So he was tried twice, never convicted. Nobody was ever convicted of this. He was from England, and him and his wife, they were traveling preachers in the Midwest. And if you know anything about the prairie in the Midwest in the early 1900s, traveling preachers, traveling Bible salesmen, think of Paper Moon, that movie Paper Moon with Ryan O'Neal. That kind of stuff really happened, door-to-door preaching, door-to-door Bible sales. So that's what Reverend George Jacqueline Kennedy did, with his wife. And after years of preaching in the Midwest, he decided to settle in Macedonia, Iowa, which, I'm sorry, I don't have a map to show any proximity. I should have done a little more research. I'm telling you, I was doing research on this like right up till I went live. There's so much information out there. And again, I strongly recommend that you watch Courtney Buckley, Scared and Alone. Look for the link in comments, and then also go on YouTube and look up Kenny Mayne's Unsolved No More. He's a cold case detective, and he's just amazing. And I got a lot of stuff from both of them. Oops, sorry about that. So anyway, so the Reverend George Jacqueline Kennedy, he was actually at the church event that night in Villisca that the Moore family and the Stillinger girls attended. And he was getting ready to go to the Presbyterian seminary. I guess you could be married because he did have a wife. It's not like going to a cemetery if you're a Catholic priest. I used to supervise Catholic priests. I'll have to tell you about that someday. Yeah, believe it or not, me used to supervise Catholic priests. Um, anyways, he was also doing work for the church too. I guess like he was a handyman or something too. He had attended the children's program that night. And he also mysteriously he left town the next morning. Bam, just got up and left town. A week later, Reverend George Jacqueline Kennedy sent some bloody clothes to the dry cleaner. So, and I'm gonna show this. Kelly says the Reverend, yeah, the Reverend. And if you watch like some of the paranormal shows, and Kelly, I know you do, that seems to be a consensus coming through in like EVPs and stuff like that. So I think there's a good theory behind that because you gotta hear a little more about this guy. The Reverend was a real weirdo, a real weirdo. You think the other guy was a real weirdo who killed his own family? He didn't commit the Villisca Axe murders, but he committed other ones. Famicide. He killed his family, not even strangers or someone else. Anyways, so back to the Reverend George Jacqueline Kennedy. He wrote long, rambling letters to investigators. That's never a good thing. He impersonated Scotland Yard detectives. Well, he was from England, so he did have an English accent, but that's not good. And I think there's a certain type of weirdo who impersonates police and maybe does false confessions. And I don't know, there's just a certain kind of weirdo out there. And I think Reverend George Jacqueline Kennedy just might have been that kind of weirdo. Excuse me. He was determined to be mentally ill. He was schizophrenic. I've worked with schizophrenic before. If anybody else has, hi Sybil. Sybil just joined the conversation. I love it when Sybil joins the conversation. Thanks for coming, Sybil. So, anyways, yeah. So the Reverend George Jacqueline Kennedy, he was schizophrenic, mentally ill. He was a firebug. What does that tell you? He was an arsonist. And he confessed to many arsonists, and maybe some of them he did do, and maybe some of them he didn't. So again, that's always a weird thing. Um, and last but probably not least on the creep factor bullet point list of Reverend George Jacqueline Kennedy, another drum roll, please. He was a window peeper. He was a window peeper. There is, again, forensic files, girls, come on. There's no such thing as an innocent peeping Tom. Window peeping escalates always and every time. So a window peeper and an arsonist, and he had schizophrenia, which I can't imagine the antipsychotics were very good in the early 1900s or any treatment for schizophrenia. And I would imagine in the early 1900s would schizophrenia probably be a blanket diagnosis for a lot of unknown things. And like we know about schizophrenia, there are many types of schizophrenia. What type of schizophrenia did this guy have? And schizophrenia does not equate always with arsonist, and arsonist does not always equate with window peeper. So let's not draw those conclusions here. The only conclusion I'm drawing is that the Reverend George Jacqueline Kennedy has a lot of bullet points on the weirdo list. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not saying one is tied to the other, but why, with all these really salient points that make him a very qualified candidate for this, leaving town the next morning, the bloody clothes, the mental illness, the window peeping, and we said there was buggery that happened in that house, and you heard it here. Well, probably not first. I found it someplace online, but you probably had never heard that before about Villisca. But why was this guy who meets all this criteria not charged with this crime? Well, he was arrested, but he wasn't charged. He was let go. Oh wait, no, this is the guy. Sorry, I apologize. Let me back up. Like I said in the beginning, this guy had two trials. One was a mistrial, one was a hung jury. Arrested in 1917. But why did authorities ultimately think he didn't do it? Because he was only 5 feet 2 inches tall and 119 pounds soaking wet. So he was about, what would they call that in a book? A diminutive size. He was a very small man, and this was a very big crime. And it would have taken strength that this guy probably didn't have. However, extreme mental health issues or an extreme psychotic break can absolutely unequivocally cause a person to have an extreme adrenaline rush and have that rush of superhuman strength. And it can happen when somebody's under the influence of drugs. It can happen when a baby is under a car and a mother lifts the car, and so a small person, I think that to rule this out just based on that seems a little bizarre when you look at all the other things. Because again, a person in the throes of a psychotic episode, or how about this? He was diagnosed as schizophrenic. He was taking medication. What the hell was he taking? Maybe they were prescribing cocaine for it. Oh, who the hell knows? I mean, where's my old 80s people out there? You know what I mean? That a person 5'2" and 119 pounds could do a lot of damage, all coked up, all speeded up. So to rule this out just based on the guy's size. I don't think so. And then that also, again, based on all these things, I think he's a really lucrative suspect. Did he have a helper? It's a big crime for a small guy. I don't know. But if he did have a helper, it would be really, really hard, I think, for two people to hide in the attic. Because again, remember what Courtney said last week. This is like the third time I brought this up in tonight's live stream. Remember what Courtney said last week. In that attic and anywhere in that house, you can hear anything. You hear clothing rustle. You can hear a cough. You can hear somebody taking a deep breath, somebody scratching, putting a book back in the bookshelf. You can hear everything. So hard enough for one person to hide out in that house. I think it would be nearly impossible for two people to hide out in that house. And that's just the opinion according to gals. If you have a different opinion, please post it. Yes, Sybil, I have seen Split, so absolutely, he could have been superhuman, and I wasn't kidding. Mental illness, I've seen that. I've seen that. I worked at Pine Tree and one of the largest homeless resources in New England, and I've seen some things with these eyes. I can tell you. So again, I think to rule that out just because of his size, I don't think that's right. He went on to have so again he had one mistrial and one hung jury, so he was never convicted. He went on to have and also there was no evidence. There was no evidence. Of course, they didn't have physical evidence the way we do now, and forensics the way we do now, and DNA testing the way we do now. And in 1912, people stomped all over the crime scene. When the crime happened and the authorities, it was probably a sheriff or a marshal, probably a county official. But when they showed up and the detective showed up, so did the neighbors and so did the family members. And it's rumored that somebody actually took a piece of Josiah Moore's skull with them, and everybody handled the axe. And so even if there were any type of forensics, they were stomped on because there were people just in and out and all over the crime scene. So that was just really sullied and kind of destroyed. But anyways, I was saying about the Reverend George Jackson Kennedy. He went on to have increasingly erratic behavior. He went on to become the chaplain for, and again, another drum roll, a lot of facta obscura coming out in tonight's live stream. He became the chaplain for the Ku Klux Klan, and he would give invocations before cross burnings. So, bless these people for killing other people. How messed up is that? But he actually went on to, I don't know, maybe redeem himself. He became the chaplain at the Bowery Mission, I think in New York City, which is second time I'm bringing up homeless shelter in a minute. That's weird, but it's the big homeless shelter in New York City, and he became the chaplain there. So I think he kind of redeemed himself. But so yeah, so again, another viable suspect. And then I'm going to cover one more. Like I said, there's like 5 or 6 or 7, but I'm going to cover one more. There's another guy named Henry Lee Moore, who is no relation to the Moore family that we're talking about. He was suspected of the crime as early as May of 1913. So again, this crime happened in June 9th, which is my husband's birthday, interestingly enough. That's when the crime happened, on June 9th. But anyways, so this guy, a little less than a year later, about 11 months later, Henry Lee Moore, again, no relation to Josiah Moore and his family who were killed. He had a tough life. By 1910, he had lost like 4 of his brothers and his father, like 3 by death, and 1 had moved away, and he was like virtually alone. And he felt that his life was over. He had a very strange upbringing. He enjoyed going to morgues. He liked the company of dead people. He kept a scrapbook. So this was, this was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. This guy kept a scrapbook of famous murders that he started this scrapbook as early as 8 years old. So I think they know, like the famous FBI profilers know that some of these like serial murderers admire other serial murderers and keep scrapbooks, not like us housewives that watch forensic files and shit like that. All completely different. But this kid, as early as 8 years old, was keeping a scrapbook of famous killers. So that's creepy in and of itself. He had a lot of law run-ins. He had an illegitimate child that was very taboo back in that day. He was convicted of forgery. He served time, so he was an ex-con. He was suspected of other axe murders. He was in love with a 16-year-old girl, and she rebuffed him, and her family rebuffed him because he didn't have his own home. So on December 17th, 1917, he checked into a hotel under an alias. Henry Lee Moore did. Again, no relation to the Moore family that lived in the Villisca Axe Murder House. He checked into a hotel under an alias. And then he went to his mother's house. And he killed his mother. And then he went upstairs and he killed his 80-something-year-old grandmother. She was 82. Beat them with an axe to death. And then he returned to the hotel. And you can only imagine what a mess he was. And he made a mess cleaning up. That didn't go unnoticed. Let's see. He was never charged. I'm not sure why he wasn't charged. But this guy This guy ultimately ended up responsible. I have the least amount of information on him, and he ended up responsible for 4 crimes, four murders that were ultimately responsible for the death of 22 people, and that doesn't include the Villisca Axe murders. So Henry Lee Moore, as did, oh my God, who else? Who was the other guy? It's like axe murders everywhere. Axe murderers, window peepers, fire starters, schizophrenics, illegitimate children. Axe murder. Suspect number 4, Andy Sawyer. I've got a couple minutes. I'll say there's just suspect number 4, and my pages go on. Suspect number 5, Joe Ricks. Suspects number 6, Paul Muller, an immigrant. So, I mean, there's so many suspects. Those are strange times in America during that time. Let's see. Kelly's got a comment for us. And I think Kelly, I'm gonna Kelly says the worst part of exploring all the suspects is how all of them have such horrific backgrounds, and it's insane that there were so many violent characters back then. Um, I think Kelly, like with people today who commit really horrific acts, it's the same thing. It's people who missed out on something growing up. Many of them didn't have nurture, didn't have, yeah, there's kind of a common, not in every criminal. Some criminals come from really good families, but good families could mean 100 things. Bad families could mean 100 things. What is normal? What's normal to me might not be normal to you. So, but there's definitely a common theme of these people coming from difficult backgrounds, probably coming from poverty. So, but the main motive would be going back to Blackie, William Blackie Blackfield, the very first guy. He's well, even he didn't really have the motive. But if he were hired by Frank Jones had motive. But again, uh, you just have to rule out destroying the whole family because you don't like the guy. Even the mafia doesn't do that. So, yeah, it is a good point, Kelly. So, I think, as always, I think I've raised more questions than answers I've presented, but I also think I presented some facta obscura, and I hope you think so too. So thank you. I'm going to start wrapping things up. Kelly, thanks for watching. Sybil, thanks for watching. Anyone else who tuned in, I really appreciated it. Appreciate it. I thoroughly enjoyed the research for this. Again, 2 shout outs. Ken Maines, the Unsolved No More. Check him out on YouTube. He has a great show. He is a cold case detective and Marine. And also check out Courtney Buckley on Scared and Alone. There is a link in comments to specifically the episode, to the Villisca Axe Murder House episode. But also check her out because Kelly and Sybil, she has been to the Weymouth Jail. She has been to Hearts of Hall. She has been to quite a few local places that we have been to. And Kelly, and thank you. I got to show this comment. This one gets a star. Whoops, that next one. Kelly loves the live streams. Thank you. I really enjoy doing them. And Sybil, going to show. I'm glad you enjoyed as well. So I am going to end the live stream. And again, I hope you all enjoyed everything. And my friends Kelly and Sybil, I'll be talking to you soon. And please like and subscribe and follow and all that good stuff. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.